Have you ever found yourself, I don't know, maybe after hauling groceries up a flight of stairs, and you just pause and realize that the energy or maybe the mental sharpness you once just took for granted is, well, maybe it's receding.
Mm-hmm.
That universal quest, not just for living longer, but for being truly healthy and vital deep into our later years, is exactly what we're tackling right now.
It's the challenge that defines our century, really. And for this deep dive, we're going straight to the source.
Yeah.
The comprehensive science-backed strategy from Harvard geneticist Professor David Sinclair.
And he's arguably one of the leading authorities on aging research today.
Without a doubt.
So we dove deep into his material, and there's this really surprising core insight right at the start. One fundamental piece of advice that seems to fly in the face of, well, decades of conventional wisdom.
Right.
Sinclair argues that if you could only choose one thing, one actionable thing to start with immediately, it would be to just eat fewer meals.
Exactly. I mean, for generations, we were all taught the gospel of 3 square meals a day, right?
Yeah.
Plus snacks.
To keep your metabolism buzzing, yeah.
Exactly. But the latest science, and we're talking from the molecular level all the way up to large human trials, it's showing the opposite. The key to turning on our body's internal repair systems is allowing for periods of rest.
So that's our mission today. We are going to unpack the 3 interconnected, science-backed pillars that this whole longevity strategy is built on. It starts with timing, moves to fuel, and then it finishes with external challenges.
So let's start with that first one, that counterintuitive pillar. Intermittent fasting. Why is the timing, this idea eating fewer meals, actually more important than the total number of calories we consume?
It really is counterintuitive. So let's unpack this. Why is not eating the magic trick here?
The mechanism is, it's actually beautiful in its simplicity. The magic isn't really about eating less food, it's the duration of the time spent not eating.
Okay.
When you extend that fasting window, the body stops relying on the easy available glucose, the sugar from your last meal. And once that fuel source runs out, the body has to switch gears.
So it's forced to go hunting for another source of energy.
Precisely. It starts producing energy from stored fat. And this physiological shift is so essential because it signals to your cells that resources might be getting a little scarce. And that signal activates these incredible internal defense mechanisms that have just been sitting dormant, waiting for a little bit of stress.
So this is not just about weight loss. It's literally signaling to the body that things are tough, and it needs to put its, I don't know, cellular emergency repair crew on high alert.
That's the perfect analogy. This fasting state activates 2 of the most critical defense systems in your cells, the sirtuins and AMPK.
Okay, sirtuins and AMPK?
Think of sirtuins as the watchdogs for your genome. They monitor your DNA, they make sure it's repaired and protected from damage.
Sure.
And then AMPK is like the body's fuel gauge and its energy booster. When AMPK is active, it triggers the production of new mitochondria.
Which are the power plants of the cell, right?
The power plants of the cell, exactly. So the body senses stress, activates the watchdogs, the sirtuins, to protect the DNA, and then it boosts the power plants with AMPK.
Wow. It sounds like a fundamental reset button.
It truly is. Sinclair himself, he shares how he went from being a bit overweight and lethargic to adopting a routine where he eats just 1 large meal, usually in the evening. And he reports feeling dramatically better, with much improved mental clarity.
And that's not just a personal anecdote, right? This is backed by some serious research, like that study on sunup to sundown fasting.
Absolutely. That was a really notable study from Baylor University. Participants fasted for 4 weeks, similar to some religious practices.
Okay.
And they saw all the benefits you'd expect. Reduced blood pressure, lower BMI, smaller waist circumference. But the key takeaway was cellular.
What did they find?
Researchers found a visible increase in DNA repair proteins, which is one of the clearest markers we have for biologically younger cells.
That is powerful. You're literally turning back the clock inside the cell. But I have to ask the practical question that everyone listening is thinking about. Those first few days of fasting can be brutal. You get shaky, you're hungry, maybe a little irritable. How do you power through that initial wall?
Sinclair is very practical about this. His advice is persistence and aggressive hydration. Drink plenty of water, hot tea, unsweetened black coffee.
So 0-calorie fluids.
0-calorie fluids. They help manage the psychological side of hunger, trick the stomach.
Okay, but what if you really hit a wall? Or do you just have to white knuckle it, or can you sneak a little something in?
You don't want to give up the whole effort. If you are truly struggling, a handful of nuts or a very small portion of plain yogurt is okay. The key is just to avoid triggering a major insulin spike, because that signals the end of the fasting state.
Right.
But the real breakthrough, that comes a few weeks in.
Tell me about that. What happens?
Well, Sinclair notes that after about 2 or 3 weeks, your body adapts. It learns to efficiently produce its own glucose from non-carbohydrate sources, mostly from the liver. It's a process called gluconeogenesis.
Gluconeogenesis. Okay.
And once your body gets good at switching on that internal fuel factory, that intense, shaky hunger just subsides. And many people report feeling incredibly focused and lucid.
That makes sense. Your body stops panicking once it realizes it has this reliable internal energy source.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I also love the tech tips Sinclair offers here, using a continuous glucose monitor, a CGM, to personalize all this.
Oh, it's a game changer. By monitoring his own CGM, he discovered these surprising individual sensitivities.
Like what?
For instance, for him, white rice and grapes cause massive blood sugar spikes, which would have just killed the metabolic benefits of his fast. But he found that for his system, potatoes were relatively benign. It's a great example of how you can tailor this approach based on your unique biology, not just some generic plan.
Okay, that covers pillar 1. We've mastered the timing of when to eat, but fasting is only half the story. Once we open that eating window, the next crucial question is what to eat. If we choose the wrong fuel, we could immediately sabotage all those sirtuin and AMPK repair mechanisms we just worked so hard to activate.
Absolutely. And that brings us to pillar 2, the smart diet. Choosing the right fuel. If we were to name the #1 longevity villain in the modern diet, it isn't necessarily meat or fat. According to Sinclair's research, it is refined sugar.
That is a serious claim. Why is refined sugar the primary enemy here, beyond just, causing weight gain?
Because it is an active inhibitor of your body's self-repair. Sugar, specifically high levels of glucose and fructose, doesn't just provide empty calories. High blood sugar actively paralyzes your cellular defenses.
Paralyzes them.
If your insulin and blood sugar are constantly high, those crucial anti-aging genes like the sirtuins are basically switched off permanently. They can't do their job of DNA repair if they're swimming in glucose.
So it's an immediate shutdown switch. And that constant sugar surge leads to that terrible byproduct you mentioned earlier, AGs.
Yes, the infamous AGs, advanced glycation end products. This is a crucial concept. When excess sugar binds uncontrollably to proteins and fats in your body, it creates these sticky, damaging molecules. We use the analogy of proteins clumping up like taffy.
And what does that actually look like in our bodies? What does it do?
It manifests as both the visible and invisible signs of aging. It's the reason skin loses elasticity and sags. Internally, it causes the hardening of blood vessels, which leads to cardiovascular problems, and it contributes significantly to chronic brain fog and even neurodegenerative diseases.
So keeping sugar low is non-negotiable. It keeps the sirtuins on and avoids that sticky protein damage.
Okay, so now let's talk about protein in meat. That's still championed by so many people as the ultimate muscle fuel.
This is where the strategy gets a bit nuanced, especially when it comes to red meat. While high protein is vital for muscle maintenance, particularly as we get older, constant intake is a problem.
Particularly the branched-chain amino acids found heavily in red meat leucine, isoleucine, and valine. They are a strong activator of another key cellular switch, mTOR.
We mentioned mTOR earlier as part of the defense system, but if it's always active, that's bad for longevity.
Correct. mTOR is the build and grow signal. It's what you want right after a heavy weightlifting session, for sure. But when mTOR is constantly active, the necessary counterpart process, autophagy, is halted.
And autophagy is, the cellular cleanup crew?
Exactly. Autophagy literally means self-eating. It's the essential cellular process that removes old, damaged organelles, faulty proteins. It generally cleans house.
So if you're always signaling build, build, build with too much protein, you never signal clean.
You never signal clean. And over time, the accumulation of all that cellular junk is strongly linked to serious chronic illnesses, including cancers, diabetes, and Alzheimer's.
That raises a critical question for our listeners, especially the ones who are really dedicated to fitness. How do you balance the need for protein to maintain muscle with the need to switch off mTOR to allow for that cleanup?
The focus has to shift. It needs to shift toward protein sources that are generally lower in those specific branched-chain amino acids, or you just lower the overall volume. This really means a heavy shift toward plant-forward eating.
Okay, so vegetables, beans, nuts, fungi. That should be the centerpiece of the plate.
That's the goal. And the evidence for this is really strong. Look at a large 2013 study. It showed that individuals on a semi-vegetarian diet had an 8% reduced risk of death compared to meat eaters.
And what about pescatarians?
Even better. Those who were pescatarian eating fish but no red meat, they saw a significant 19% reduced risk of mortality.
That is a measurable difference. Now, you mentioned something really interesting about the quality of those plants. Plant hormesis.
It's a fascinating insight. Plant hormesis is the idea that when plants are under natural stress like from drought or pests, they produce their own defense molecules.
Resveratrol, things like that.
Exactly, resveratrol, quercetin.
Yeah.
And when we eat these compounds, they act as mild stressors on our bodies, which ironically tells our own body to activate those sirtuin repair systems.
So the advice is to look for the ugly produce, the stuff that might have faced a bit of adversity.
Precisely. Choose organic, naturally grown vegetables and fruits that don't look perfect. They tend to be richer in these beneficial compounds than the big, perfect-looking hothouse varieties that haven't faced any stress.
And we can't forget healthy fats. They're so crucial.
They're vital. Healthy plant oils, extra virgin olive oil, avocado, chia seeds, almonds, they do double duty. They help you absorb fat-soluble vitamins, and they also actively encourage the sirtuin genes to stay active.
So like the Mediterranean diet.
That's the model. The Mediterranean diet, rich in these fats, had been shown to reduce overall mortality risk by a phenomenal 31%.
Okay. Excellent. So we're fasting intelligently and we're fueling smart. But there's one more element, pillar 3, that doesn't involve the kitchen at all. And it's about giving the body a positive shock. This is where it gets really interesting.
This brings us to pillar 3, hormesis, or positive stressors. This is the biological principle summed up by that saying, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. Your body is highly adaptable, and it thrives when it's exposed to moderate controlled challenges.
Cold, heat, heavy exertion.
Exactly. And the mechanism here is crucial. These external shocks mimic the effects of fasting. They activate those same powerful repair systems we talked about in Pillar 1.
So you're recruiting the sirtuins and AMPK again.
You are.
Let's start with the most accessible one, exercise. What kind of movement gives us the most longevity bang for our buck?
The science points strongly toward high-intensity interval training, or HIIT. This means short, sharp bursts of maximum effort.
Like a 30-second sprint and then a minute of walking.
That's the idea. The rapid, high effort strongly activates AMPK, our energy gauge. And this activation dramatically increases the production of new mitochondria in your cells. More mitochondria means vastly increased energy capacity and endurance.
But for listeners who can't handle true HIIT, what's the baseline?
Even moderate activity counts. Consistent daily movement is essential. 30 minutes of brisk walking every day, or just always taking the stairs instead of the elevator, those are meaningful positive stressors. Consistency trumps intensity when it comes to longevity.
Okay, now for the shock treatments. Cold therapy. Voluntarily jumping into cold water sounds miserable. What is the specific benefit there?
It sounds painful, but the benefits are significant. Exposure to cold forces the body to generate its own biological heat. This process activates what's called brown fat, which is this metabolically active fat that burns calories to generate heat.
So it makes you a more efficient fat burner.
A more efficient fat burner, and it dramatically improves your insulin sensitivity.
Okay. And then on the opposite end of the spectrum, we have heat therapy, like a sauna. I mostly associate that with just relaxation.
The evidence is compelling. A multi-year Finnish study found that people who used a sauna 4 to 7 times a week reduced their risk of cardiovascular death by a massive 50%.
50%? Wow.
High heat dilates your blood vessels, which improves circulation, and it activates something called heat shock proteins.
Then what do they do?
They are specialized repair molecules. Their job is to find and repair cell damage and get rid of faulty proteins. It's a whole-body tune-up, all initiated by controlled heat stress.
So exertion with HIIT and then temperature shock with cold and heat. If someone doesn't have a sauna or a cold plunge, what's a practical daily way to apply this?
The easiest way is to just manipulate your shower. End your daily shower with 30 seconds to a minute of cold water.
Ooh.
Or you can alternate between hot and cold blasts.
Yeah.
It's a really accessible way to activate those defense systems every single day.
This has been incredibly clear. So to wrap up this deep dive, the 3 pillars, fasting, smart fuel, and hormesis, they paint a really simple picture. Longevity isn't about chasing some expensive futuristic cure. It's about repeatable lifestyle habits.
That is the core message. Your body's default state is to self-repair and rejuvenate, but modern living, constant snacking, sugary foods, total physical comfort, It inhibits those natural systems.
So we need the rest from fasting, the clean of fuel from plants and good fats, and the daily challenge from activity and temperature.
This is the formula.
So the actionable steps are clear. Eat fewer meals, prioritize colorful plants and healthy fats while strictly avoiding sugar and limiting excess meat, and introduce some daily activity and temperature shock. And the key is patience, right?
Yeah.
Because it's the small, consistent changes that yield those massive results over time.
And this brings us right back to the real-world evidence. Think about those long-lived communities you hear about, the Okinawans, people in the Mediterranean. They often lived in imperfect conditions. They were constantly challenged by physical labor, their diets were simple, and they were exposed to the elements. They were practicing these pillars without even knowing it.
Which leaves us with a final, provocative thought for you to consider. If modern comfort, the soft couch, the constantly full fridge, the client-controlled car is inhibiting our natural defense mechanisms, what small, sustainable daily discomfort could you embrace starting today to activate your own internal repair system? That is your challenge and your key takeaway from this deep dive.